Rain fell in relentless sheets, drumming against the roof of the small cabin where Mia had sought refuge from the world. The forest around her seemed to close in, shadows stretching unnaturally between the twisted trees, and the wind carried whispers she couldn't quite place, half the sound of leaves, half the murmurs of something watching. She hugged her arms around herself, the chill of the storm seeping into her bones, and cursed under her breath. This was supposed to be a weekend escape from the chaos of her life, a chance to breathe without the suffocating weight of expectations, of betrayal, of everyone she'd ever trusted turning their backs. Instead, it felt like the forest itself was conspiring against her. She had barely unpacked when a sharp, distant howl cut through the storm, jagged and wild. Her heart leapt. Not an ordinary wolf's howl. It carried an unnatural resonance, something deeper, more intelligent, almost mournful. She froze, straining to hear over the pounding rain, and her instincts screamed at her to run, to flee deeper into the woods, anywhere but here. But her feet stayed rooted to the mud-slick path outside the cabin. She wasn't sure why. Curiosity, or was it some stubborn defiance, held her in place. Then she saw him. He emerged from the tree line like a shadow stitched from the darkness itself, drenched and imposing, every movement fluid yet lethal, the kind of presence that made the air itself shiver. His eyes caught hers, golden, feral, and impossibly knowing. Mia's breath caught in her throat, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them, the stranger and her. There was danger radiating from him, raw and undeniable, yet beneath it, a flicker of recognition, like he had been searching for her long before she had even arrived in this cursed forest. "Are you okay?" she called, voice trembling against the storm. He didn't answer immediately, just watched, as if measuring her, testing her very soul. Then he took a step forward, water dripping from his soaked hair and leather coat, eyes never leaving hers. He didn't move like a human. There was a predator's grace in the way his muscles tensed and relaxed, the way his gaze pierced past the surface. She wanted to look away, to retreat into the safety of her cabin, but some unseen tether held her there, as though the forest itself refused to let her go. Before she could think, a sharp crack of lightning split the sky, illuminating the figure fully. He was impossibly tall, broad-shouldered, and the rain plastered his dark hair to his forehead in a way that made him look both wild and tragic. His jaw was rigid, as if he were holding some heavy secret behind his storm-dark eyes. "You shouldn't be here," he finally said, voice low, roughened by rain and some deeper, hidden power. I needed shelter," she admitted, voice shaking. "I wasn't expecting this." Her gaze flicked to the woods behind him. "What is out there?" He didn't answer. Instead, he tilted his head, as if listening to something she couldn't hear. A growl, or was it the wind, rolled through the forest, vibrating through the wet earth. Mia's stomach twisted, fear lacing her veins. She realized, suddenly, that she was not just cold or wet. She was exposed, vulnerable, and utterly unprotected. Then, in a blink, he shifted. Not fully human, not fully beast. There was a flash of movement, a blur that made her pulse spike and her heart hammer against her ribs. In an instant, she glimpsed fur, amber eyes, and a snarling, wolfish snout before he drew back, human again, his expression unreadable. Her breath caught, terror and awe mingling. "You're not," she whispered, but words failed her. "Danger doesn't wait for understanding," he said, stepping closer, and she instinctively stumbled backward, nearly slipping in the mud. His eyes softened just enough to confuse her. It wasn't friendliness exactly, but it was something warmer than the storm, something almost human. yet she could see the beast lurking beneath, restrained but restless, a coil of power and rage that could snap at any moment. The moment stretched taut between them. The storm roared, and the forest seemed to lean in closer, as if listening. And then, the wind brought another sound. The unmistakable scent of blood, metallic and urgent, carried on the rain. The stranger's head snapped toward it, nostrils flaring, muscles tensing. "They're close," he muttered, almost to himself. Mia's mind spun. "Who's close? What do you mean?" Before he could answer, a low growl rolled from the woods, louder this time, a threat that made the hair on her arms rise. Something was coming, and he, this terrifying, magnetic stranger, didn't hesitate. He moved in front of her, a protective wall of muscle and primal intensity, eyes glowing like fire through the storm. "Stay behind me," he ordered, and for the first time Mia obeyed, heart pounding, every instinct screaming that her life depended on it. Lightning split the sky again, illuminating a shadow that lunged from the trees. Mia screamed, stumbling backward, and the stranger shifted, again, and was gone in a blur of fur and fury. The creature from the forest collided with him, and the howl that followed was both inhuman and heartbreakingly familiar. Mia wanted to look away, to run, but some inexplicable force anchored her gaze. When the sounds finally faded, he returned, human, dripping, eyes smoldering with danger and something else, something she couldn't name. He offered no explanation, only a single ragged breath, as though surviving the storm and the attack was a small miracle he had narrowly pulled off. Mia swallowed hard, realizing with a sinking thrill that nothing in her ordinary life had prepared her for this. The world she had known, safely predictable, painfully ordinary, had cracked open. And through that fissure, something primal, magnetic, and dangerous had stepped in. Something that would not let her go. She didn't know it yet, but her life had already changed. The stranger, this alpha, this wolf, this enigma, had marked her, in ways she couldn't yet understand. And the forest around them whispered secrets older than humanity itself, secrets that bound her to him whether she wanted it or not. Mia's hands shook as she stepped back into the cabin, glancing at the rain-slicked window, the silhouette of the man, or wolf, lingering in her mind. Somewhere deep inside, fear warred with fascination, and a single, undeniable truth began to take root. She was not leaving this forest unchanged, and neither was he. The storm raged on, but for the first time in years, Mia felt alive. The next morning, the storm had passed, leaving the forest glistening with rain-soaked leaves and mist curling between the trunks like ethereal fingers. Mia wrapped herself in a thick sweater, trying to shake the lingering tremor from the night before. She had barely slept, haunted by the golden eyes that had burned into her mind, the ghostly howl, and the memory of a strength so raw it had made her pulse stutter. She wasn't sure if she was terrified, exhilarated, or drawn in ways that made no logical sense. She had intended to leave the cabin, to retreat from whatever danger had brushed against her yesterday. But something rooted her to the forest path, a restless curiosity she couldn't resist. Perhaps it was foolishness, or perhaps something deeper, a whisper of fate she didn't yet understand. And then she saw him again. He was seated on a fallen log at the edge of a clearing, the morning light turning his damp hair to glimmers of gold and shadow. His posture was relaxed, almost casual, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed an alertness that made her skin prickle. When he noticed her, his gaze sharpened, piercing through the mist as though he had been expecting her all along. "Back so soon?" he asked, voice low, with a teasing edge that only made her pulse quicken. Mia stopped a few paces away, unsure whether to retreat or approach. I just wanted to see if you were..." She faltered, realizing she had no logical way to finish the sentence. Okay, she finally said. He smirked faintly, a hint of amusement breaking the edge of his feral aura. I always survive storms, sometimes barely. His eyes flicked to the surrounding trees, alert, calculating. Then he returned his attention to her, his gaze softening slightly. And you? Did the storm leave you unharmed? I think so, she said, though her heart was still racing. She didn't mention the shiver that had crawled up her spine the night before, the way she had felt a strange tether pulling her toward him. She couldn't explain it, and part of her feared to admit it aloud. He studied her quietly, as if weighing her soul. Then, with a sudden fluidity that reminded her of a predator, he stood and moved toward her. His footsteps were silent on the damp earth, but his presence filled the space, an invisible pull that made it impossible for her to look away. "You're not like anyone I've ever met," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She hadn't meant to speak so openly, but the words slipped out as though carried by the wind itself. "And neither are you," he replied, a subtle edge in his tone that made her stomach tighten. There was an intensity in his gaze that suggested he could see everything she had tried to hide. Her fears, her loneliness, the scars she carried silently. Mia took a hesitant step closer, drawn by something she couldn't name. Why are you here? Why did you save me?" He hesitated, and in that pause the forest seemed to hold its breath. Then he said, "Because you shouldn't have been alone in the storm. And because I felt you." The words were strange, almost intimate, as though they carried a weight she was not prepared to understand. Her heart skipped a beat. "Felt me?" she echoed, confusion mixing with an unbidden warmth in her chest. He inclined his head slightly, eyes darkening with something fierce and ancient. "Some things are felt before they are understood. Some connections are unavoidable." His gaze held hers, unwavering, and she felt a shiver of recognition, like a memory she had never lived but somehow knew. For a long moment, silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant drip of water from the trees. Mia wanted to speak, to ask more, to understand the impossible pull she felt toward this man, this predator who had saved her yet terrified her in equal measure, but words failed her. Finally, she whispered, "I don't even know your name." "Rael," he said, the single word slipping out smoothly, like a secret revealed too soon. "And you're Mia." Her breath caught at the sound of it. The way he said her name, it was both soft and consuming, like he had been practicing it in his mind since the moment he first saw her. A part of her wanted to step back, to create distance, but another part, the part she didn't understand, wanted to move closer, to linger in the warmth and danger he radiated. "You remember me?" she asked, suddenly aware of how intimate it sounded. "I never forget," he replied simply. His gaze softened just enough to make her stomach twist with anticipation and fear. "Not something like this. Not someone like you." Mia felt her pulse quicken, the air around them charged with something electric, something that whispered of destiny and danger intertwined. And then, as if sensing the invisible boundary she hadn't yet crossed, Rael stepped back, restoring a cautious distance that left her both frustrated and relieved. "I don't understand any of this," she admitted, voice trembling. "I don't understand why I feel drawn to you. Why I can't leave this forest." He didn't answer immediately, only tilted his head, eyes narrowing as he scanned the surrounding trees. "Some things," he finally said, voice low and deliberate, "don't need to be understood. They need to be faced." Mia swallowed, sensing the weight behind his words. She didn't know what she was supposed to face, or why it mattered that he had entered her life so violently and yet so completely. But she knew one thing. She could not walk away. Not from him, not from whatever this storm had awakened in her. Then, without another word, he turned and disappeared into the forest. No sound, no warning, just gone, leaving her standing alone in the morning mist. For a moment, Mia thought she might run after him, desperate to cling to the mystery and the danger he represented. But something deeper, quieter, told her to stay, to wait, to let whatever was happening unfold. And so she remained, heart pounding, listening to the forest come alive again with the gentle rustle of leaves and distant bird calls. The storm had passed, but its aftermath lingered in her veins, a thrill of fear and possibility she could not ignore. Somewhere in the trees, Rael was watching, waiting, bound to her by a force neither of them fully understood yet. And Mia, despite every instinct screaming to resist, felt the first flicker of a dangerous, impossible pull. One that would not allow her to walk away. One that promised a collision of worlds she could never have imagined. The unlikely meeting had ended, but the story, their story, was only beginning. The days after the storm bled together in a haze of damp mornings and restless nights. Mia found herself unable to shake the memory of Rael. His golden eyes, the predator's grace, the strange magnetic pull that had drawn her toward him in the forest. At first, she had tried to rationalize it, telling herself it was simply adrenaline, or fear, or the mind playing tricks after a sleepless night. But the more she thought about him, the more she realized that something about Rael defied explanation. He didn't belong in the human world, and yet he existed, fully, dangerously, and with a presence she couldn't ignore. She returned to the small cabin, attempting to reclaim the routine of normal life, though normal felt impossibly distant. Every sound in the forest, the rustle of leaves, the snap of twigs, the distant howls of animals, made her flinch, imagining him lurking just beyond her vision. Sometimes, in her imagination, he appeared at the edge of the trees, watching her, waiting, silent, and impossibly still. She shook her head, frustrated with herself. She was human. Humans didn't encounter monsters, at least not ones that made the heart pound and the skin tingle with forbidden curiosity. And yet, she couldn't stop thinking about him. On the third day, she decided to venture further into the forest. She needed answers. Or perhaps she just needed to see him again. The path was slick with mud and rainwater, and the mist curled around the trunks in ghostly ribbons. Her pulse quickened with every step, a mixture of fear and anticipation she could neither name nor deny. It wasn't long before she sensed him before she saw him. The air shifted, the subtle scent of earth and something wilder, muskier than any animal, drifted toward her. She froze, heart hammering. And then he emerged, not from the trees this time, but from behind a cluster of ferns, stepping silently onto the path as if he had been waiting for her. "Rael," she breathed, relief and exasperation mingling in her voice. What are you doing here? He held up a hand, cutting her off with a gesture that was more instinctive than commanding. "Do not speak yet." His eyes scanned the surrounding woods, sharp and unblinking. There was a tension in his shoulders, a readiness that made the hair on her arms rise. Something is near. Something not of this world. Her brow furrowed. "Not of this world?" She felt a prickle of unease. "You mean another shifter?" He interrupted softly, almost reluctantly, and the word hung between them like a forbidden confession. Mia's stomach flipped. She didn't know why the idea scared her, yet it did, and yet it somehow made sense. The power he radiated, the way he moved, the way he could appear and vanish. It was more than human. "You're a shifter," she whispered, incredulous. You're one of them?" Rael's gaze darkened, and for the first time, he allowed a flicker of vulnerability to show. "Yes," he admitted, "and it changes everything. Not just for me. For you as well." Mia took a cautious step back, trying to process what he had said. Her mind raced, flipping through every story, every legend, every warning she had ever heard. And yet, despite the danger, the fear, there was a part of her that felt something else, a magnetic pull that made it impossible to look away. "Why me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why are you involved with me?" His eyes softened fleetingly before hardening again. "I do not choose these things," he said, "but fate, destiny, it does." He let the word hang, heavy with unspoken meaning. "There is a bond between us. I felt it the moment you entered the forest. It cannot be ignored." Mia's pulse quickened at the intimacy of his words, at the undeniable force that seemed to hum in the space between them. Yet fear gnawed at her. She didn't understand this world, this power, or the depths of the connection he claimed. And still, despite every rational thought screaming at her to run, she found herself unable to move. "Bond?" she repeated, voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," he said simply. "Something primal, something old, something neither of us can escape." His gaze held hers with an intensity that made her stomach twist. "I will protect you, but you must understand, the world you know, the life you think is yours, will change forever. And the choice will not be yours alone." The forest seemed to lean closer, as if listening. The shadows deepened, the wind hushed, and Mia realized she had never felt so small, so exposed, and yet so alive. Fear, fascination, and an unnameable longing twisted inside her, binding her to this enigmatic, dangerous man in a way that terrified her. She wanted to question him further, to understand the rules of this strange world he hinted at. But Rael's attention had shifted. His ears twitched subtly, too fast, too precise, and he crouched slightly, muscles coiled. A low, guttural growl emanated from the underbrush, vibrating through the earth beneath her feet. Mia's heartbeat surged. "What is it?" she whispered, gripping a tree trunk for support. Rael's eyes met hers again, fierce and protective. "A rival pack," he said simply. "They are close, too close, and they do not care who is caught in their path." Panic pricked at her, but he held up a hand. "Stay calm. Do not move unless I say. Trust me." Mia nodded, her fingers trembling, her heart racing. She didn't fully understand why she trusted him, or why she wanted to, but the pull was undeniable. And as the rustling grew louder, and shadows shifted in ways she had never seen before, she realized that this forest, this world, and this man would not let her go. Not now, not ever. And somewhere deep inside, a part of her, stubborn and defiant, wanted that. The sun dipped low behind the trees, casting the forest in shades of amber and gold. And for the first time since the storm, Mia felt a cautious sense of calm. The rival pack had retreated, their growls fading into the distance, leaving only the whispering wind and the occasional rustle of leaves. Yet despite the temporary reprieve, a tension lingered between her and Rael, unspoken but palpable. It wasn't just the danger of the world he inhabited, it was him, the enigmatic, fierce man who had saved her, whose golden eyes burned with secrets she couldn't begin to fathom. "I should go," she muttered, stepping backward, though her feet were reluctant to obey. Rael's gaze softened, almost imperceptibly, but it was enough to make her pause. "Not yet," he said. His voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to command, yet there was an unusual gentleness layered beneath it. "You're safe for now. Sit." She obeyed, settling on a moss-covered rock, her wet clothes clinging uncomfortably, and tried to calm the erratic beating of her heart. She studied him as he crouched nearby, eyes scanning the forest, hands resting lightly on his knees in a position that was both relaxed and predatory. There was a duality to him that she couldn't reconcile. Dangerous, yet protective. Distant, yet intimate. Human, yet something else entirely. "You were reckless," she said finally, unable to keep the tension out of her voice. "Running into the forest like that. I could have been caught," he finished for her, a shadow of amusement flickering in his eyes. "Yes, but it would not have mattered. I would have found my way to you regardless." Mia blinked, unsure how to respond. There was a certainty in his words that was both unsettling and strangely comforting. "Why do you care so much about me?" she asked, whispering, more to herself than to him. Rael's gaze softened, just slightly, and for a moment, the predator seemed to recede, leaving behind a man who was tired, worn, burdened by responsibilities she could barely imagine. "Because you matter," he said quietly. "And because something about you doesn't belong in the world you think you know. You are meant for more than fear, more than the life you've been running from." Mia's chest tightened. His words were like arrows, striking deep into the wounds she had carried silently for years. He saw her, not just her outward fear and vulnerability, but the fractures in her soul, the parts she had hidden even from herself. And yet, instead of judgment, he offered understanding. "You're full of riddles," she muttered, attempting a nervous smile. "I don't even know what to make of you." He allowed himself a small, fleeting smile, the corner of his lips twitching as if tempted to reveal more, but ultimately choosing restraint. "That's because some truths are not spoken," he said. "They are felt, experienced, earned." Something inside her stirred, a mixture of longing and curiosity that made her stomach flutter. She wanted to ask more, to understand everything about him, to pry into the mysteries he carried, but she sensed that the answers would not be offered freely. Not yet. And perhaps that was the point. Hours passed, the golden light of sunset fading to the muted blues and grays of twilight, and still they sat, occasionally exchanging glances, sometimes silence, sometimes words that carried weight far beyond their simplicity. Slowly, Mia began to notice the little things. How he flinched when the wind carried an unfamiliar scent. How his eyes softened when he looked at her. How he moved with the care of someone protecting more than just a life. "Tell me something real," she said finally, testing him. "Something that isn't just shadows and warnings." He considered her carefully, and for the first time, allowed a fragment of himself to show. "I was not always like this," he admitted, voice low and heavy with memory. "I was born into a world of duty, of expectation, of power that I did not ask for. I have lost much, and yet I have survived. Not because I am strong, but because I learned when to trust and when to wait." Mia felt a pang of empathy, an ache for the loneliness she saw mirrored in him. "I know what it's like to be afraid, to run from the world and from yourself," she confessed softly. "To carry a life you didn't choose, to hide the parts of yourself you think no one could ever understand." For a brief moment, their worlds aligned in silent recognition, two wounded souls finding a strange resonance in one another. Rael's gaze lingered on her, intense yet not predatory, vulnerable yet undeniably commanding. He reached out, not touching, just holding the space between them, a silent offering of connection. "You're different," he said finally, almost a whisper, "but not fragile. Not really. And that is why I cannot let you go." Mia's heart skipped. His words were dangerous, magnetic, and utterly compelling. She wanted to retreat, to resist, to deny the pull that drew her toward him, but something deep within rebelled. Something primal and unrelenting whispered that she had already crossed a line, that the tether between them had been tied the moment she had seen him in the storm. As the night deepened, they finally rose, the forest around them alive with unseen movement and whispered secrets. They walked together along the path back to the cabin, their steps almost synchronized, an unspoken trust building with every shared glance, every careful word. For the first time, Mia felt a fragile sense of belonging, not to the human world she had fled, not entirely, but to the presence of this enigmatic man who had stormed into her life and refused to let go. And Rael, for all his power and mystery, found himself aware of the delicate, intricate bond forming between them, a trust that could either save or destroy them both. The night was quiet, save for the distant howls of wolves, and Mia realized that the forest, the storm, and the man who had become her reluctant protector had opened a door she could not close. A door into a world of danger, desire, and destiny she had never imagined, and a connection she could not deny. For the first time since she had entered the forest, she allowed herself to hope. The forest had grown darker with the rising moon, shadows stretching like tendrils between the trunks, and a chill seeped into Mia's bones. Though she had begun to feel a tentative sense of safety with Rael, a part of her still trembled with the memory of the storm, the unknown creatures lurking beyond the trees, and the raw, unpredictable power that radiated from him. Tonight, the tension in the air was different, heavier, sharper, as if the world itself was warning them of an imminent threat. Rael led her through a narrow path, silent and watchful. His senses seemed attuned to every rustle, every shift in the wind, and Mia's own pulse raced in response. She wanted to ask questions, to voice her fears, but something in his taut posture told her that words could wait. Survival came first. "Something's wrong," he murmured, more to himself than to her, nostrils flaring as he sniffed the air. Too many scents, overlapping, confused, aggressive. Mia's stomach twisted. "You mean another pack?" Rael's jaw tightened. "Worse. A rogue. A predator that does not answer to any alpha, any law, and it knows we are here." The forest seemed to close in, the trees casting unnatural shadows that made her heart hammer in her chest. Every instinct screamed to run, but she couldn't move. Not away from him, not away from the invisible threat he had already identified. She realized with a sinking clarity that the world Rael inhabited was far more dangerous than she had imagined. A sudden rustle behind a thicket made her gasp, and Rael's body tensed instantly, muscles coiled and ready. He moved with a blur, faster than her eyes could follow, and emerged seconds later, standing between Mia and the invisible threat. His golden eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight, predatory and precise. "You need to trust me," he said firmly, voice low and commanding. "No hesitation, no fear, only focus." Mia nodded, though fear laced every fiber of her being. She had felt trust before, human trust, but this was different. This was primal, raw, life-or-death trust, and it terrified her. Yet she knew, instinctively, that Rael's word was law in this moment. Her survival depended on it. The growl came again, louder and closer, vibrating through the wet earth. Mia could feel it in her chest, in her bones. A predator, powerful and unrelenting. And then a shape moved through the trees, massive, sleek, fur black as night, eyes glinting with malice. The rogue. Rael's stance shifted, subtle yet unmistakable. His hands flexed, jaw set, every movement radiating lethal intent. "Stay behind me," he ordered. Mia's heart leapt, but she obeyed, crouching behind a large tree trunk, her breath shallow, hands pressed against the rough bark. The rogue emerged fully, towering and menacing, its growl a deep, guttural warning. Rael's eyes met hers for the briefest of moments, a silent reassurance that he would not let harm come to her. Then he moved. The fight was sudden, brutal, a blur of movement and sound. Rael shifted seamlessly, his form blurring between human and wolf, his speed and power unmatched. Mia could barely comprehend the scene, how one being could move with such deadly precision, strike with such force, yet remain controlled, restrained. The rogue lunged, teeth bared, and Rael intercepted, snarling, claws raking, power flashing in every motion. Mia's pulse hammered in her ears. She had never witnessed anything like this, never imagined a world where survival depended on strength and instinct so primal it bordered on magical. And yet, in the chaos, there was a strange, unsettling beauty, a dangerous dance of dominance, skill, and raw emotion. Minutes, or maybe seconds, passed in a blur of growls, strikes, and flashes of golden eyes. Finally, the rogue faltered, staggering back, and Rael pressed the advantage, his movements precise, efficient, controlled. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The rogue slunk into the shadows, defeated but alive, leaving only a silence heavy with tension and the scent of wet earth and blood. Rael returned to human form, chest heaving, muscles tense, and Mia's knees weakened. She wanted to run to him, to touch him, to check that he was real, that he was safe, but words failed her. All she could do was stare, her heart a frantic drumbeat of awe and fear. "You saw," he said quietly, voice still carrying the remnants of the fight. "You saw why I cannot let you go. Not from this forest, not from me. There are things that would harm you, that would take what belongs to you before you even realize it. And I am the only one who can protect you." Mia's chest tightened, a mixture of fear, relief, and something deeper, more dangerous, attraction. She could not deny the pull she felt toward him, the fated intensity that seemed to bind them together with invisible threads. Yet fear lingered, pricking at her mind. She didn't belong in this world. And yet, in some strange, unexplainable way, it felt as though she had already stepped too far into it to return. I don't know if I can," she whispered, voice trembling. "I don't know if I can survive here, in this life." Rael stepped closer, his gaze softening for the briefest of moments. "You are stronger than you realize," he said, "and you will not face it alone. I will teach you, guide you, protect you, but you must trust me. Trust me with everything, or this world will consume you." Her breath hitched. The words carried a weight she could not ignore, a promise and a warning intertwined. Fear warred with desire, hesitation battled instinct, and yet deep inside she knew the truth. She could not walk away. Not from him, not from this life, not from the destiny that had bound them together since the moment their paths collided. The forest seemed to sigh around them, the trees whispering secrets of old, of power, of fate, and Mia realized that whatever lay ahead, pack conflicts, rogue predators, curses, or battles, she would face it with him. Because the pull that had drawn her here was stronger than fear, stronger than reason, and it would not let her go. The next evening, the forest was quieter than usual, cloaked in a velvet darkness that made every shadow seem alive. Mia had insisted on accompanying Rael deeper into the woods, despite the lingering fear from the rogue encounter. Part of her didn't know why. Part of her was drawn to him, compelled by something she couldn't name. A part of her wanted answers, and the rest simply didn't want to leave him behind. They arrived at a clearing she had never noticed before. Moonlight spilled across it like silver paint, illuminating a small, ancient stone circle. The air hummed with energy, heavy and electric, and Mia felt it in her bones. An undeniable, almost painful pull. "This is," she began, but Rael's hand gently pressed against her arm, stopping her. "It is sacred," he said quietly, eyes scanning the perimeter as if expecting danger to spring from the shadows. "Not just to my kind, but to the balance between worlds. Here, you will understand." Mia's gaze followed him, curiosity battling caution. Understand what? He stepped into the center of the circle, his body shifting subtly under the moonlight. She saw it again, the transformation she had glimpsed during the rogue encounter. But this time, it was deliberate, controlled, mesmerizing. His human features stretched, bones shifting with grace and power, muscles tensing beneath fur that shimmered with a golden hue. His eyes glowed, not with anger, but with the fierce intensity of a predator bound by rules she did not yet know. "You're a wolf," she whispered, awe and fear mixing in her voice. "A real werewolf." Rael's gaze met hers, intense, unwavering. "Not just a wolf," he corrected gently. "I am alpha of my pack. This is not a choice, Mia. It is inheritance, blood, and destiny. And now, it is yours to understand, too." Mia took a step back, heart pounding. "Destiny? Mine?" "Yes," he said, shifting back to human form, voice heavy with emotion. "The bond between us was forged long before you were born. Soul-bound, fated. That storm, that night, it was the beginning. And whether you accept it or not, it cannot be broken." Her mind raced, trying to reconcile the impossible. A human woman, drawn into a world of shifters, bound by fate to an alpha male whose very presence stirred both fear and longing. I don't understand any of this," she admitted, voice trembling. "Why me? Why this bond?" Rael stepped closer, his golden eyes softening, vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen before. "Because you are not ordinary. You have strength, heart, and a resilience that even the storms of life could not break. That is why the bond exists. You are my mate, not in a fleeting, mortal sense, but in a way that transcends time, blood, and world. And whether you accept it now or resist, you will feel it, always." Mia's breath hitched, the enormity of his words settling into her chest like a weight she could not lift. She had spent her life hiding, running from pain, rejection, and the mundane cruelty of human existence. And yet, here he was, this impossible, terrifying, magnificent man, offering her a place, a connection, a destiny she had never dared to imagine. "But the dangers," she whispered. "You just fought a rogue. What if there are more? What if I'm not ready for this world?" Rael reached out, fingers brushing her cheek gently, grounding her. "You are ready," he said softly, almost fiercely. "I will protect you. I cannot promise the world is safe, but I can promise you that I will not let harm come to you while I draw breath. And soon, you will learn to protect yourself, too." Mia swallowed hard, tears threatening to spill. It was too much, too fast, too impossible. But the pull in her chest, the tether she could not deny, was undeniable. She reached out, trembling, letting her hand hover near his chest. I trust you," she whispered, though the words felt inadequate. His expression softened, a rare vulnerability breaking through his alpha exterior. "Then stay with me," he murmured. "Learn, feel, survive. And one day, you will understand the full depth of what we are, what you are, what this bond means." The forest seemed to hum around them, alive with unseen energy, ancient and eternal. Wolves howled in the distance, the moon shone brighter, and the air thickened with the power of something old, primal, and unyielding. Mia realized with a mixture of fear, awe, and anticipation that nothing in her human life would ever matter again. She had crossed a threshold. She had entered a world she could not escape, a world where danger and desire intertwined, and where the man standing before her, alpha, predator, guardian, and mate, was as fated as the moon itself. And as she gazed into his golden eyes, feeling the pulse of the forest, the power, and the unbreakable bond between them, Mia knew the truth she could no longer deny. Her life, her heart, and her destiny were now entwined with his. Forever. The forest had grown cold and silent, an almost unnatural stillness that pressed down on Mia's chest as she followed Rael deeper into the shadows. The moon hung high, pale and unyielding, and the scent of damp earth and pine filled her senses, grounding her even as fear gnawed at the edges of her courage. She had learned to trust him, tentatively, painfully, in the way one might trust fire, beautiful, essential, and capable of burning everything. But tonight, something felt wrong. A subtle shift in the air, a tension in Rael's shoulders that he didn't bother to mask. He moved with precision, eyes darting constantly, nostrils flaring. Mia's gut tightened. "Rael, what is it?" she whispered, voice barely above the rustle of the leaves. He didn't answer immediately. His jaw tightened, and for a fleeting second, she thought she saw the vulnerability she had glimpsed before vanish, replaced by something almost cruel in its intensity. Finally, he spoke, voice low and deliberate. "There is a choice I must make, and it may hurt you." Her heart stumbled. "Hurt me? What do you mean? Are you leaving me?" Rael's eyes met hers, golden orbs flickering with conflict. "No, I would never leave you. But sometimes, protection demands sacrifice. Sometimes, the alpha must act alone to keep those he loves alive." Mia's breath caught. She had faced fear, danger, and the impossible pull of destiny, but nothing had prepared her for this. "Alone? You don't have to do this alone. We can—" "No," he interrupted sharply, though not without a tremor in his voice. "Not this time. This rogue. It is cunning, relentless. If I involve you, you may not survive. I cannot allow that. You must trust me. You must stay here while I confront it." Her chest tightened, a storm of anger, fear, and helplessness colliding. "Stay here?" she echoed, voice trembling. "Do you realize what you're asking? That I just wait while you risk everything? While I do nothing?" Rael's hand brushed hers briefly, a fleeting connection that both soothed and burned. "It is not nothing," he murmured. "It is trust. And sometimes, trust is the only weapon we have." Mia swallowed hard, the weight of his words settling into her chest. She wanted to protest, to fight, to insist on standing by his side, but the reality of his strength and the danger he faced made her falter. Her pride rebelled, but so did her survival instinct. She nodded slowly, the first seed of obedience and faith planting itself despite the ache in her heart. "Promise me," she whispered, voice breaking. "Promise me you'll come back. Promise me you won't let this destroy you." Rael's gaze softened for just a moment, the alpha shield slipping to reveal the man beneath, vulnerable and human despite the wolf beneath his skin. "I promise," he said quietly. "But you must understand. Promises are fragile when fate intervenes. I will do everything I can, but the outcome is never guaranteed." Before she could protest further, he vanished into the darkness, silent and swift, leaving Mia alone with the whispering trees and the rising wind that seemed to echo her heartbeat. She sank to the ground, wrapping her arms around her knees. A trembling, fragile human in a world ruled by predators, magic, and ancient laws she barely understood. Minutes stretched into eternity. Every rustle, every snap of a twig made her flinch. Her mind raced with possibilities. What if he didn't return? What if the bond she had so recently come to understand and embrace was broken before it had even truly begun? Her chest ached with the unfairness of it, the cruelness of a fate that demanded sacrifice from both of them. And then, a sound, subtle at first, a faint growl followed by the rapid, deliberate footsteps of Rael closing the distance. Her heart leapt. She scrambled to her feet as he emerged from the shadows, bruised and bleeding, but alive. His golden eyes, though dulled with exhaustion, held relief, and something else, something softer, reserved only for her. "I told you," he murmured, voice ragged. "I told you I would return." Mia rushed forward, wrapping her arms around him despite the damp, the blood, the weight of the fight. "Don't ever do that again," she whispered fiercely, pressing her face against his chest. "Don't ever leave me like that." Rael held her close, one hand cradling her head, the other pressed against her back with a strength that belied exhaustion. "You misunderstand," he said softly. "I left because I had to protect you. You are everything, Mia. If anything happened to you, I would not forgive myself. Sometimes love demands that we bear the burden alone." Her tears fell freely now, mingling with the cold, wet night. She didn't care about the danger anymore, about the rogue, about the world, about anything but him. "I don't care," she whispered. "I don't care if it's dangerous. I don't care if I'm afraid. I just don't want to be without you." For the first time since she had met him, Rael allowed himself to soften completely. He pressed his forehead to hers, his breath mingling with hers, the intensity of the alpha fading into something intimate, raw, and human. "Then stay with me," he murmured. "Trust me fully, and we will face whatever comes together." The forest held its breath around them, the shadows and whispers and ancient power retreating in deference to the bond forming between them. And Mia realized, with trembling clarity, that trust and sacrifice were no longer abstract concepts. They were the foundation of everything that would follow. The storm, the rogue, the danger. It was all meaningless compared to the tether binding them. And as she clung to him, trembling yet unyielding, she knew one undeniable truth. Love, in its most terrifying, consuming form, was worth every sacrifice. The wind tore through the forest with a savage intensity, rattling the branches and whipping the rain against Mia's face. She had insisted on accompanying Rael despite the storm warnings, driven by a mixture of fear, curiosity, and an unrelenting need to be near him. The forest, alive with whispered threats and shifting shadows, seemed to pulse with energy, as if aware of the danger that approached. "Rael, are you sure we should—" she began, but the words were cut off by a low growl that vibrated through the wet earth. He was already alert, muscles coiled, golden eyes glowing with predatory focus. "Stay close," he ordered, voice a low rumble that sent shivers down her spine. "Do not stray. Do not speak unless I tell you to. There is no room for hesitation." Mia's heart hammered as they moved through the mud-slicked underbrush. Fear licked at the edges of her mind, but she clung to him, instinctively trusting his every movement. And then the creature appeared. A massive wolf-like figure, larger than any natural animal, with fur dark as night and eyes burning with malice. This rogue was different, more cunning, more dangerous, and it lunged at them with terrifying speed. Rael reacted instantly, shifting with fluid grace into his wolf form. His claws tore into the ground, muscles rippling, teeth bared as he intercepted the attack. Mia's breath caught in her throat as she watched the battle unfold, heart pounding not with fear alone but with awe. She had never seen anything so raw, so primal, so utterly magnificent. And then, in a terrifying instant, the rogue broke through Rael's guard, lunging straight for her. Panic surged, pure and unfiltered, and Mia's survival instincts flared. She stumbled backwards, screaming, ready to run. But Rael was there in a heartbeat, his body shielding hers, growling a warning that made the air itself tremble. "Stay still," he commanded, voice sharp, eyes blazing. Mia froze, chest heaving, feeling the weight of his presence, the power that surrounded him. And then, something strange happened. The fear that had gripped her since the moment she entered this world began to transform, not into safety, not into calm, but into clarity. She saw him, not just as the alpha, the protector, the supernatural being, but as the man who had saved her, who had trusted her, who had allowed her into his world. And in that instant, the bond between them crystallized. Rael's eyes softened for just a moment, the feral predator giving way to something achingly human. "Mia, trust me," he whispered, almost pleading. "I will not let harm come to you." She realized then that trust was not passive. It was active, a choice, a leap into the unknown. And she chose it, fully, without hesitation. Her hands moved instinctively, finding his shoulders as if grounding them both, as if the bond itself could channel strength. With a guttural roar, Rael shifted again, his power surging, and together they faced the rogue. It was no longer simply a battle of predator against predator. It was a convergence of trust, connection, and unbreakable bond. Mia felt it in every fiber of her being, the pulse of his heartbeat, the heat of his breath, the rhythm of their shared fear and determination. Minutes, or hours, she couldn't tell, passed in a blur of motion and energy. When the rogue finally retreated, wounded and defeated, the storm seemed to exhale around them, the wind dying down, the rain easing into a gentle drizzle. Mia fell to her knees, exhausted, trembling, and Rael knelt beside her, wolf form shifting back to human. "Are you hurt?" he asked softly, brushing wet hair from her face. I'm fine," she whispered, though every muscle in her body ached. "But that was terrifying." He smiled faintly, not the predatory grin she had seen before, but a soft, intimate curve of lips meant only for her. "And yet you stayed," he murmured. "You faced it. You trusted me, even when it was dangerous, even when fear screamed at you to run. That is more than most could do." Mia's chest tightened, emotions tumbling over one another. Relief, awe, fear, desire, love, all intertwined in a dizzying, consuming wave. She had seen him at his most primal, his most protective, his most vulnerable, and she had chosen to trust. And in doing so, something shifted between them. The tether that had always existed became a chain, unbreakable and binding, pulling them closer than fear, danger, or hesitation ever could. "Rael," she whispered, voice trembling. I trust you. Fully." His golden eyes softened, and he drew her close, hands framing her face, his forehead resting against hers. "Then you have nothing to fear," he murmured, "because whatever comes, we face it together. Always." And in the quiet aftermath, amidst the rain-soaked forest and the lingering echoes of the battle, Mia realized that the moment of fear, of danger, had transformed into something else entirely, a revelation of trust, of love, and of the unshakable bond that would carry them through every shadow, every threat, every impossible moment that lay ahead. She had crossed the threshold. She had embraced the danger, the unknown, and the alpha who had become her anchor. And in that acceptance, in that raw, unguarded trust, Mia and Rael found not only safety, but a profound intimacy that neither storm nor predator could ever sever. The forest was quiet now, bathed in the soft glow of dawn. Mist curled among the trees, dampening the world in a pale, ethereal light, and for the first time in days, Mia felt a moment of stillness. She sat beside Rael at the edge of a small clearing, exhausted from the previous night's chaos, yet every fiber of her being thrummed with a new awareness. Of him, of herself, and of the unspoken tether that had grown impossibly stronger between them. Rael's golden eyes studied her quietly, not with the intensity of an alpha asserting dominance, but with a vulnerability she had rarely seen. The predator had softened, the weight of battles and duty momentarily lifted, leaving only the man she had come to know, the man who had saved her, protected her, and shown her a world she had never dared imagine. She began, hesitating as she searched for words that felt adequate. I don't know how to say this. Rael tilted his head, a small, patient smile tugging at the corner of his lips. You don't have to speak, he murmured. Your heart has been saying it for days, for weeks. I can feel it. And I have felt it too, whether you acknowledged it or not. Mia's chest tightened, a rush of emotion she could barely contain. She had been running from love all her life, from its fragility, its risks, its capacity to hurt. But with him, it was different. With Rael, every fear, every hesitation, every past wound felt both irrelevant and irrelevant. The connection between them had transcended fear. It had become something raw, undeniable, eternal. She started again, but he gently placed a hand over hers, silencing her. Mia, he said softly, look at me. She obeyed, meeting the depth of his gaze. There was no command now, only an invitation, a pull she could no longer resist. I love you, he said simply, the words carrying the weight of everything, his power, his history, his vulnerability. I have from the moment I saw you in the storm, when fate first brought us together. I tried to deny it, to restrain it, but it is impossible. You are mine, as I am yours, in every sense that matters. Mia felt tears prick her eyes, a mixture of relief, fear, and overwhelming joy. I love you too, she whispered, voice trembling. I tried to fight it, tried to reject it, tried to protect myself, but I can't anymore. I am yours. The moment hung between them, fragile yet unshakable, as the world seemed to pause, honoring their confession. Rael's lips found hers, gentle at first, testing, savoring the taste of her acceptance. Then, with growing intensity, as the connection between them ignited, every brush of skin, every heartbeat, every breath intertwined, sealing the bond that destiny had forged long before they had ever met. When they finally broke apart, it was only by a fraction, faces inches apart, foreheads pressed together. We are bound, Rael murmured, voice low and reverent, fated, soul-bound. Nothing in this world can sever what has already been tied. Not danger, not rivals, not time. Mia nodded, feeling the truth in his words echo through her very being. Then let us face it all together, she whispered. Whatever comes, we face it as one. A soft wind rustled the trees, carrying with it the scent of earth and rain and something indefinably ancient. Wolves howled in the distance, a chorus that seemed to acknowledge their bond. The alpha's roar mingling with the forest's whisper, a symphony of fate and power. Rael wrapped his arms around her, holding her close, and for the first time, Mia felt fully, completely, undeniably at home. The forest, the storms, the danger, all of it had led her here, to this unbreakable connection, to a love that defied reason and transcended fear. And in that embrace, with the dawn breaking over the misty forest, Mia and Rael understood the truth of their destiny. They were not just lovers, not just protector and protected. They were soul-bound, fated, and unstoppable. Together they could face anything, for they had discovered the greatest strength of all: love that refused to be denied. The full moon rose high over the forest, its pale light spilling across the treetops and illuminating the clearing where Mia and Rael had chosen to rest. The serenity of the dawn and mist that had accompanied their love confession was gone, replaced by a tension that hummed through the air, electric and unyielding. The rogue had not been defeated completely. It had merely retreated, waiting, hunting, and now returning with a ferocity born of vengeance. Rael's jaw was tight, nostrils flaring as he picked up scents only his heightened senses could detect. "It knows we are here," he muttered, voice low, almost a growl. "It has waited. Tonight, it will strike with everything it has." Mia's hands gripped his arm, the bond between them pulsing stronger than any fear. "Then we fight. Together." Rael's eyes softened as he turned to her, golden orbs filled with both pride and concern. "This is no ordinary fight, Mia. It will test everything: your courage, your strength, your bond with me. And it may demand more than either of us can give." She swallowed hard, but the trust she had forged in the past nights of danger and emotional breakthroughs anchored her. "I am ready," she whispered. "Whatever comes, I will not leave you." A low growl echoed from the shadows, sending shivers down Mia's spine. Then the rogue emerged, massive and vicious, eyes glowing red under the moonlight. It moved with unnatural speed, circling them, calculating, predatory. Rael shifted instantly into wolf form, powerful and lithe, standing between Mia and the threat. His claws dug into the earth, muscles coiled, golden eyes locked on the enemy. Mia's heart pounded, but she felt the bond between them, a tether of fate, unbreakable and binding. She realized that the fear that had once consumed her was no longer stronger than her will to fight beside him. With a deep breath, she stepped forward, placing her hands on his back. "We are one," she whispered, letting the energy of their bond flow through her. "Together." The rogue lunged. The battle erupted with violent intensity. Rael moved with lethal precision, dodging, striking, and countering, his wolf form blurring between human and beast in a breathtaking display of strength and skill. Mia, guided by instinct and the bond they shared, moved in tandem with him, anticipating his actions, supporting, and even defending when the rogue's attention wavered. Time became a distorted flow. Every heartbeat, every movement, every breath a synchronized rhythm between them. Mia felt the surge of power in Rael's presence, the unyielding connection of their fated bond guiding her through the chaos. And in that shared rhythm, they became unstoppable, an unbreakable force. Finally, with a coordinated strike, Rael and Mia drove the rogue back, forcing it to retreat into the darkness. Its growl faded, leaving the forest silent but charged with residual tension. Panting, covered in mud and blood, they stood together, the storm of danger having passed. Rael shifted back into human form, his chest heaving, eyes glowing softly. "You were incredible," he murmured, brushing damp hair from her face. "Stronger than I could have imagined. You have embraced everything, every danger, every fear. You've become more than human tonight." Mia shook, exhausted yet exhilarated. "No, you were incredible. I could feel your strength guiding me. We did it together." A faint smile touched Rael's lips. "Together," he echoed, capturing her face in his hands, golden eyes filled with tenderness. "Nothing can break us, Mia. Nothing. Not packs, not rogue predators, not fate itself. We are bound, soul-bound. And now, nothing can undo that." Mia's heart swelled, tears of relief and joy brimming. She leaned into him, resting her forehead against his. Then, let's go home, she whispered. Wherever that is. With you. Rael nodded, a quiet promise resonating in his gaze. The forest, once a place of shadows and fear, now seemed alive with acceptance, as though the trees themselves acknowledged the bond they had forged and the destiny they had embraced. As they walked from the clearing, side by side, the moonlight shining down on them, Mia realized that the trials, the danger, and the fear had only strengthened what they shared. Their love was no longer a fragile spark. It was an unbreakable fire, fated and eternal, capable of weathering anything the world could throw at them. And in that quiet triumph, in the bond of soul and spirit, they finally found the truth they had both been seeking. Together, they were unstoppable, unbreakable, and destined for a life neither could have imagined alone. The forest had returned to its quiet rhythm, bathed in the soft glow of dawn that filtered through the trees. The storm, the danger, and the rogue threat were now distant memories, whispers of trials that had tested their bond and forged it stronger than either had imagined. Mia and Rael stood together in the clearing, hands intertwined, golden sunlight catching in his hair and reflecting in her eyes, a living testament to the journey they had endured. Rael's chest rose and fell steadily, the tension and adrenaline of the past nights finally giving way to calm. He turned to Mia, a smile softening his usually guarded features. "We've survived," he murmured, voice low and intimate, almost reverent. "Not just the forest, not just the rogue, but ourselves, all the fears, all the doubts, and we've emerged together." Mia felt warmth flood her chest, tears brimming but controlled. "We have," she echoed, "and somehow, I feel like I'm finally home, with you, in this world I never thought I could belong to." Rael cupped her face gently, his thumbs brushing away stray damp hairs, his golden eyes reflecting both tenderness and awe. "You belong," he said firmly. "You belong to me, yes, but more than that, you belong here, in this world, in this pack, in the life we will build together. Nothing can undo that. No past, no fear, no rogue predator, no curse. You are mine, Mia, as I am yours, soul-bound, fated, eternal." Mia's lips trembled as a smile broke through, and she pressed herself against him. "And I will follow you, Rael, through forests, storms, battles, whatever comes, as long as we are together." He drew her close into an embrace that was at once protective and tender, the alpha and the human no longer separated by fear or doubt, but united by trust, love, and destiny. Around them, the forest seemed to exhale, the trees standing as silent witnesses to their bond, the mist and morning light blessing the union that had survived every trial. "Come," Rael whispered, pulling her gently toward the edge of the clearing where the rest of his pack waited. Wolves padded softly at the edges, their eyes calm, accepting, as if acknowledging Mia's place among them. "This is your world now too. Not just mine, not just the alphas, but yours. And together, we will face everything that comes." Mia inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of every moment behind her, the rejection, the fear, the danger, the bond that had grown despite it all, and exhaled with a serene certainty she had never known. "Then let's face it," she whispered, "together." And as the sun rose fully over the forest, casting golden light across the trees and mist, Mia and Rael walked hand in hand toward their future. No longer hunted, no longer running, no longer separated by doubt or fear. They had found peace in each other, acceptance in their bond, and the promise of a life entwined by love, fate, and the eternal pulse of the shifter world. The rogue may have lurked in the shadows, The storms may come again, and the forest may hold dangers unknown. But together, they were unstoppable. Together, they had discovered the true meaning of trust, sacrifice, and destiny. And together, they would write the rest of their story. One heartbeat, one embrace, one faded moment at a time. Mia tilted her head, resting against Rael's chest, and whispered, "Just for him. I'm home." Rael tightened his arms around her, a soft growl of contentment rumbling in his chest. "Home," he echoed, voice low and certain. "Forever." And for the first time since the storm had brought them together, the world felt whole, safe, and impossibly alive.